All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect, known as Monday, July 10th, 2023, Missile Monday. So, came across this article from the Indy 100, and it says conspiracy theorists are trying to claim that nuclear weapons aren't real. So I'm just going to go into this article a little bit, play a clip, and then bring out a few scriptures. So Lord willing, this lesson is how to find straight to the point. So it says, conspiracy theorist and right-wing comedian Owen Benjamin is now claiming that nuclear weapons do not exist because there is evidence of cameras filming nuclear blasts. Now, just before I continue, obviously, they had cameras back then that could record footage of these explosions happening. So, if nuclear weapons don't exist, then Hiroshima and Nagasaki must have been a hoax, when clearly it wasn't, but this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, you know? So, I'm going to continue. It said, it's weird that the nuclear blast vaporized brick houses, but do not, Slakia, but not the old times camera recording it. Is because nukes are fake, Benjamin claims. Hiroshima and Nagasaki never had any fallout. Slovakia. And then I didn't even know he was going to say this. He said Hiroshima and Nagasaki never had any fallout radiation. The whole narrative and all the evidence is absurd. Twitter was quick to add context through community notes saying the cameras were in bunkers 5 miles away from ground zero with telescopic lenses allowing for the cameras to record the nuclear explosion. Regards to Benjamin's claims regarding Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they wrote that they have no fallout radiation today as the atomic bombs were detonated at an altitude of 600 meters. His tweet has over 10,000 likes. Well, nobody cares about that. This is clearly what this man said. No, it's madness. He doesn't think that, nuclear weapons exist. Oh, well, nuclear weapons were able to vaporize the brick, but not the cameras. Like, dude. So that was the clip. You know, he's worried about the cameras, but, there's plenty of evidence that nuclear weapons not only exist, but are being used to this day and are going to be used during World War III. So this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. And I can only assume, yes, this dude is a Edomite, whatever. It's going to make me sign in. I was going to go to his picture, but it don't matter. And I'm saying this dude, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Nuclear weapons don't exist when clearly they do. Like you just proved that nuclear weapons exist by saying that they vaporize brick like the dude. It's madness, man. So again, starting with Isaiah 50, yes, like you. Starting with Isaiah 54 verse 16, and it says, behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. I have created the waster to destroy. Now the Lord, ultimately created these scientists. He gave them the knowledge to be able to create nuclear weapons, which were developed, during, the late 40s during World War II, and ultimately used, to drop those bombs on Japan, which those weren't the only accounts, but there's also multiple accounts of, the United States military and even, Russia testing multiple nuclear bombs. America has even tested nuclear, bombs on itself in Nevada in the middle of the desert, and that footage or that clip that was featured, I'm pretty sure that was from, one of those explosion sites because they've tested so many nuclear bombs in the Nevada desert that it pretty much created a crater, you know, or craters, I should say, they pretty much look like the moon from certain videos. So I just found this clip. I'm gonna play this clip. So I'm gonna use this for fair use purposes.
It can be tough for my mind to come to terms with the fact that mankind in the mid-20th century deliberately created a destructive force that could wipe out virtually all life on Earth, the nuclear bomb. There are weapons in existence today that if a couple of keys were turned and a big red button was pressed, could arrive via missile and completely destroy my home city of Edinburgh, which is just over the water there, killing hundreds of thousands of people in the process. The nastiest of them all, the thermonuclear weapons, are as scary as it gets. We were so terrified of the force that we'd created that from the 1940s onwards, we started building facilities for our heads of state and military to stay in so that they'd survive a nuclear blast and continue leading the country. Believe it or not, underneath that farmhouse is a nuclear command bunker. And in today's video, we're going to explore it and show how it would save you in a nuclear war. Built in 1951 just outside the sleepy fishing village of Anstruther in Fife, this bunker was kept top secret until the end of the Cold War, being abandoned in 1993. It has since been restored and turned into a museum. What's quite interesting is that this bunker was built on the specs of the Hiroshima bomb. Obviously, nuclear technology progressed massively onwards from that during the Cold War, so the owners have never been sure whether this facility would have survived a much more powerful thermonuclear explosion. There's going to be some cool shit down there, isn't there? But before we delve deep underground, let's start with a quick lesson on how a nuclear bomb works. Starting with Otto Hahn, a pioneering German scientist in the 1930s, the discovery of nuclear energy almost instantly went down the road of building weapons. The US jumped on it first, with FDR giving the green light to the Manhattan Project, with the goal to make a bomb. One of the greatest theoretical physicists of all time, Julius Robert Oppenheimer, rallied together a team of mathematicians, engineers and scientists to create the first ever nuclear explosion.
And this is what Isaiah 54:16 is talking about. The German scientists that created these nuclear weapons. So again, this dude, Owen, whatever his last name is, the dude is retarded. I'm just saying, he's fucking retarded. Because this clearly just debunked what he said. Now, you know what I'm saying? They say that, us brothers that are in this truth, we're conspiracy theorists because we're pretty much prophesying the things that are going to take place. Meanwhile, this idiot is talking about nuclear weapons don't exist. But clearly there's plenty of evidence from past and present that they do. They're around, they're here, they're being used, and they're going to be used. And what this man is describing, thermonuclear missiles, which is going to be used during World War III, this is what's going to be used, they're real. He doesn't believe it, he doesn't think they're real until he sees them himself. That's just if this man survives the hell that is going to come upon this earth. So I'm going to continue.
Named the Trinity Test, Oppenheimer and his team had officially christened the nuclear age. There was no going back from here. Atoms, the thing that literally everything in the universe is made out of, have a nucleus that contains protons, positively charged particles, and neutrons that have no charge. Keeping the protons compacted into the nucleus requires a serious amount of force, like forcing two opposing magnets together. By firing a neutron incredibly quickly at an atom, in this case of uranium-235 isotope, you can split the atom in two, smashing it apart, which leads to more neutrons being released along with some heat energy. That then happens again, and again, and again to form what is called a chain reaction. That leads to an exponential increase in heat energy in a fraction of a second, the recipe for an explosion the size of this. In the grand scheme of things, however, a fission bomb is peanuts compared to a fusion or hydrogen bomb. A hydrogen bomb is a whole other level of nope. It uses nuclear fusion to create a much, much bigger explosion. Nuclear fusion is when you combine the nuclei of two atoms into one heavier atom. Hydrogen atoms are positively charged, so they naturally repel each other. But by compressing them together, you reach a critical point where an explosion is possible. But that takes a huge amount of pressure and heat. We are talking in the tens of millions of degrees. A clever mathematician called Stan Ulam came up with a plan of using a fission bomb, an atomic bomb, to trigger a fusion reaction between hydrogen atoms to create what is called a thermonuclear explosion. So just to clarify, an atomic bomb is used essentially as a starter motor for a hydrogen bomb. Fusion is what the sun runs on. So by creating a thermonuclear explosion, mankind, for a split second, creates its own small sun. So, let's say a thermonuclear weapon is dropped on your city, and let's assume it's the biggest that has ever been exploded, a 57 megaton bomb. What happens next? Well, it's exploded in the air above the city to maximize the size of the blast, so it's not impeded by buildings or terrain. Also, the shockwave bounces back up off the ground, adding to the size of the blast. Anyone that can see the explosion will immediately be blinded by a light that is said to be brighter than 1,000 suns, and everyone will incur serious retinal damage. Everyone within a 3-mile radius of the epicenter will be completely incinerated, vaporized by a fireball. That explosion then creates a massive shockwave that will get to a 16-mile radius, tearing through buildings like butter. Another result of that shockwave is debris will be flying absolutely everywhere, which will be incredibly deadly. So you're
Alright, pretty much just gonna go off of what he said. Just the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50 and verse 1. And it says, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up against Babylon, and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me, a destroying wind. I will send I will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land, for in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. And again, that destroying wind is going into, again, what that man is describing, that shockwave, because once that nuclear bomb is detonated, it's going to create that explosion, which is then going to create a shockwave, you know, and pretty much, like he's saying, is going to, vaporize anything within 60 miles. But even what they're developing now is going to be extremely devastating. Just what Russia created in the 1960s alone, the Tsar Bomba, you know, that nuclear bomb alone was extremely devastating. It created a huge mushroom cloud. You know, they said that the pilots that dropped it barely had time to escape, you know. But again, that dude Owen Benjamin claims that nuclear weapons aren't real. Yeah, he's wrong.
City centre has been vaporised, the rest of it will be flattened or on fire. And if you've
Slovakia. And then again, also what he's describing, he said people are going to be vaporized, right? So again, most of us have seen the movie Terminator 2. We're familiar with the scene, with Sarah Connor, where she had the dream that she was pretty much killed, by way of a nuclear explosion. She was on the fence and she was pretty much vaporized. So this is the book of Zechariah, chapter 14 and verse 12, and it says, "And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth." So again, that's how devastating, the impact from these missiles are going to be, because again, like you said, they're going to be burning at, you know, millions of degrees. Recently, you know, or not recently, but a few months ago, the elder brother Kazak down in Mississippi did a video on how hot these missiles were going to burn. Now, the sun itself is 15 million degrees Celsius. These nuclear missiles are going to burn hotter than the sun. Said these missiles are going to burn at 100 million degrees Celsius, you know. So that means these missiles are going to burn 75 million degrees hotter than the sun itself. So that should tell you something, you know. That's how things are vaporized. This is how people pretty much are going to be melted, you know. And that's not going to be a quick thing either, It's not going to be a quick death. It's going to be slow. It's going to be horrible. But again, that guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
survived all of that, you then need to move very quickly and very decisively. One of the most important things in surviving a nuclear explosion is getting as much concrete between you and the blast as possible. Not only is this bunker 30 meters underground, but it's also encased in 10 feet of concrete. And also, it's obviously not hampered by weak points like windows and doors. It does have doors, but these things are 1.5 ton blast doors. These things can take a serious shot.
Again, and they're describing these bunkers that, the elites, that run the world, they're going to go into these bunkers, or, their space stations, or wherever, to pretty much take shelter, because they know what's about to come. They know that America is going to be destroyed, you know. So I'm going to go to the book of okay. This is Luke 23 and 30, and it says, "Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us," you know. And again, that's exactly what these elites are going to do. They're pretty much going to go into hiding. Now, the people that do, besides the elites that do have, these bunkers, especially here in America, they're still going to die. It doesn't matter that bunkers aren't going to save them from these missiles, because America is going to be pelted by these missiles. I'm also going to go to Revelation 6 and verse 16. I'm going to start at verse 14. No, it's lucky. I'm just going to read from 12 on down. This is Revelation chapter 6, verse 12, and it says, "And I beheld, it's lucky, and I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And again, that's describing those missiles hitting America, you know, that's describing because they're going to cover the sky. It's going to be a very dark day. So if it's, daytime, when that day comes, it's pretty much going to be dark. Like nighttime is going to cover the sun, you know, missiles along with the chariots, the angels, they're going to cover the sky, and the stars again are those nuclear missiles, the warheads in particular. Verse 14, and the heaven departed together as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. So, the earth is pretty much going to be changed. Again, it's not going to look the same, but America is going to be left completely desolate. Now, again, the heavens rolling together as a scroll, that's describing that mushroom cloud, that that blast that pretty much the guy described, and even you can see videos of it. That's what it's talking about. The Apostle John. It's not going to say he saw a mushroom cloud. Like he was limited of how he could describe it at the time, but that's pretty much what it's talking about. But again, the scriptures clearly describe nuclear weapons. But this dude, obviously, he's a damn Edomite. He doesn't believe, but even, regular Edomites, they know about this. They're scared. And even then, the movie that they're about to make about, Julius Oppenheimer, they said people are walking out of theaters because, again, people know that World War III is real. They know it's inevitable. They know that nuclear weapons are an extreme possibility, They know they're going to be used. But again, this guy doesn't believe, and he'll believe it when he actually waits, his death. This is verse 15. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens, and in the rocks of the mountains, and said unto the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come. Who shall be able to stand? And yes, only the elect of the nation of Israel are going to be able to survive that day, especially those that are over here in America, because anyone that's left here is going to die. They're going to die ultimately, because again, that's what the elites are going to do. They're going to run, they're going to hide in their little bunkers. But ultimately, that still isn't going to save them because, once the Lord returns, delivers his elect, at that appointed time, they're going to come back down from the chariots, and ultimately take them into slavery. So again, that's, why they're developing these things to pretty much hide from the wrath of the Lord because they know that their judgment is coming.
The next stage actually kills far more people than the initial fireball and shockwave. Right now, there is a huge mushroom cloud that's towering miles above the epicenter, and that created so much air pressure that it sucked an enormous amount of dust up into the atmosphere. That dust then becomes radioactive, and after just 30 minutes begins to fall back down to Earth. That is called nuclear fallout, and it will kill hundreds of thousands of people in the following weeks. That is because the ionizing radiation literally tears your DNA apart and will give you illnesses like cancer and leukemia, but that is only if you've lived long enough to not die straight up of radiation poisoning. It can be weeks before it's safe to go outside, and in our simulation, over 700,000 people in and around Edinburgh will perish, and over 900,000 people will suffer from major injuries from that radiation. This is the head of operations, where the Minister of State could sit and govern the country from within the bunker. You can also see straight through there to the communications room where all the planning would be actioned. Communications would almost certainly be hampered with internet cables and telephone lines being disabled, so initially radio would probably be the best form of communication. Any plans made in here would then be sent through via switchboard and coding machines to the outside world. They'd be sending out instructions, news and advice to everyone else out there. I've only ever seen displays like this in Star Wars, but it's amazing what it shows. It shows if certain bombs were dropped in certain places with wind speeds and direction, what people and where would be affected by the fallout. It's scary, but incredibly interesting. Apparently, they would play war games in here on a monthly basis. In a nuclear bunker, you have this. Down here, they call it the plant room, and it's essentially an industrial scale air purifier. It filters the air entering the bunker for radiation, nasty gases, any other forms of bio-warfare. It can shift 52,000 cubic feet of air every minute, meaning it can completely replace the air content in the bunker 14 times in 15 minutes. It is a major component to survival that us civilians living out there dealing with all of that fallout would massively miss out on. You will also be desperate for water and non-perishable foods, avoiding anything that could have got contaminated by radiation. For example, you wouldn't be wolfing down one of these on the reg.
All right. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 8 and verse 11. And it says, and the name of this star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many died of the waters because they were made bitter. And yes, again, he just described that once these nuclear, excuse me, Slovakia, that after, the initial blast and, that nuclear fallout happens, it's pretty much going to contaminate everything. Water mainly is going to make it bitter. It's going to be poison. And that's what Revelation 8 and 11 is describing. And that's what the guy is describing. That's what's going to happen. People aren't going to be able to eat anything. They're not going to be able to drink any water, because it's going to be contaminated by that nuclear fallout.
Another result of a thermonuclear explosion is that it creates an EMP, or electromagnetic pulse. That essentially kills anything that's running on electricity. Your best bet at home would be to find some spare batteries sitting around that you can put in battery-operated devices. This bunker is connected to the national grid, but predictably it also has a backup plan with its own powerhouse to generate its own energy. There could be up to 300 people working in here, which is a scarily small amount considering the apocalyptic scenes that would hypothetically be happening above ground. Also, when James May talks about loving a scratchy blanket, this is exactly what he means.
I want to talk to you about something that's been making waves on social media lately. You've probably seen this guy.
Lookers, Turnhouse, these are airfields that have jet fighter squadrons at them, and they would be given a 4-minute warning of an impending nuclear attack to get every single aircraft scrambled and up into the air before the blast. Lookers and Kinloss are still active today, detecting Russian aircraft entering British airspace. I'm covering this subject matter today because I find it incredibly interesting, but thankfully, this place has never had to be used properly for what it was built for. It has been nearly 80 years since over 200,000 people were either killed or horrifically injured in the US bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. To this day, they are the only times that nuclear weapons have been used in war.
But that guy doesn't believe. He thinks those bombs were fake. Well, clearly, there's plenty of evidence, of nuclear fallout. There's plenty of evidence of the United States even, paying reparations to Japanese Americans during that time, that were affected by it. So that guy, Owen Benjamin, is a fucking retard.
Things are moving in the right direction, with the nuclear arsenal of the world decreasing over time, but the rate of change has massively slowed recently, and there's still 12,000 nuclear warheads spread out around the globe. 90% of...
No, he said 12,000. That's actually more than that. It's more than 12,000, 12,000 is just light. That may be just for, a couple missiles, that they have, because these missiles that they're developing now can hold multiple warheads, I don't want to let to finish.
them are owned by the USA and Russia. In the UK, things are getting very contentious on this subject year on year. Britain's nuclear arsenal, consisting of 225 Trident missiles sat in Vanguard-class submarines, is situated at Fass Lane in a sea lock on the west coast of Scotland, about 100 miles west from this bunker. But it's fair to say that the majority of Scottish people don't want them there. Firstly, because many don't see the need for them here anymore, and the fact that they're not in some incredibly remote part of the Highlands. The nuclear submarines are just 30 miles from Glasgow.
And then real quick, I just have to keep bringing this up. He doesn't believe nuclear weapons are real, but clearly there's people protesting where he's at that they don't want nuclear weapons there anymore. But you have Kim Jong-un parading his missiles, walking down the street with them as well. Dude's retarded.
Scotland's most populated city. If an enemy nuke was targeted at Fass Lane, Glasgow would easily be within the death zone. With Scottish independence being such a hot topic these days, could we see nukes heading away from Scotland? And could that theme spread to other countries, moving national security away from these frighteningly destructive genocidal weapons? After the Trinity test in July 1945, J. Robert Oppenheimer famously said this:
"We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.
Many of the scientists, mathematicians and engineers that worked on the Manhattan Project were against things getting out of hand and the technology escalating further. They said that the information should be shared with the rest of the world, explaining that thermonuclear weapons were possible, but that there should be a treaty signed so that that technology never made it into the world. Sadly, those pleas fell on deaf ears, with too many US politicians and members of the military being too threatened by the Soviet Union. That led to things escalating from the 15 kiloton Hiroshima bomb to the 57 megaton Soviet Union Tsar Bomba. That thing was 3,800 times larger than the bomb that ended World War II. Today's video was about nuclear weapons. What next?
So again, this man just went into nuclear weapons. So again, this guy, Owen Benjamin, ultimately, like I said, if he survives, which I personally hope he does, survive Jacob's trouble, ultimately to be destroyed by these missiles, because how do you not believe something that's obviously real. Like, it doesn't make sense. There's too much evidence of nuclear weapons existing, not only existing, but being used. You know, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings were just, the most notable incident that took place. But, Russia has missiles. Obviously, America has missiles. North Korea, China, just these various companies, I was about to say companies, these various countries have nuclear capabilities. But again, he doesn't believe it, but that's okay. Here's the book of Revelation, chapter 11, and verse 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And yes, the second woe being World War II, which he went into, that third war being World War III. And that's going to be it. There's not going to be any more wars after this. This is going to be the wars to end all wars. That's why these nuclear missiles are being developed. You know, this is why, because again, ancient wars were fought hand to hand combat. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, and verse 4. Slakia. This is Isaiah 9 and 5. And it says, for every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. Now, the elder down in Birmingham, he brings us out all the time. Like, why is that? Why is this in the scriptures? Burning and fuel of fire. What is that describing? Nuclear missiles. Because again, we all know, those of us that are into this kind of thing, we all know that, conventional war was usually hand-to-hand combat, you know, swords, spears, shields. But this war is going to be fought with missiles, you know. So he doesn't believe it, but ultimately it's written in the scriptures. There's plenty of evidence out there that the average person can look up to prove that nuclear weapons exist and have been used and tested, you know. So again, Owen Benjamin does not know what he's talking about. This guy's obviously, he has to be looking for some type of attention, because who makes a statement like that? You don't believe that nuclear weapons are real? Dude is nuts. So I'm going to go to the book of Malachi, chapter 4, and verse 1. For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble, and the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. And yes, what is that describing? The day coming that shall burn as an oven? Again, that's going to be where those nuclear missiles hit, because they're going to be hot. We've all been, by an oven. When it's on, you open it, then that heat just comes out and hits you. Like, that's describing how those missiles are going to be, you know, because they're going to be on. Lord, it's madness, but I'm just going to get it and then end it on this. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 9, and I'm going to start at verse 15. And it says, the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men, the Edomites, so-called white men. The third part of men, you have three parts. You have the sons of God, which are the Israelites, the sons of men, which are the other heathen nations, and the wicked, which is the Edomites, so-called white people. Verse 16. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire, and of jacinth, and of slacking and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these was the third part of men killed by the fire, and by the smoke, and by the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth, and their tails, for their tails, it's lucky and in their tails. I'm going to reread that. Verse 19. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails. For their tails were like unto serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And yes, these are describing those warheads. 200,000, ultimately 200 million warheads are going to ultimately wipe out America. This place is going to be wiped off the map. You know, Isaiah 34 describes how after these missiles hit, it's going to completely leave America desolate. It's going to be a desert, you know. But again, this man doesn't believe that. But I'm reading how how not only nuclear weapons exist, but how they're going to be used and what their purpose is and what they're going to do. Oh, 200 million warheads, you know. And then again, when those missiles are shot, you know, some of them are going to be shot into space. You know, they're going to leave the ozone layer ultimately. They're going to return to the Earth after they, you know, get their specific coordinates and their target. They're going to return back to Earth, and they're going to come back down to Earth on fire because they're going to be traveling so fast. You're going to feel the heat from these missiles before they touch down, you know. Then again, you know, the power is in these warheads, you know. And they said they had tails like serpents. Again, that's that rocket system that is propelling these missiles to get to their specific target. So again, Owen Benjamin doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. You know, nuclear weapons are real. Nuclear weapons are going to be used. You know, so that's it. I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem, Kakodash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say shalom.